of my favorite things to do at XDS every year is to interview incredible people, and we absolutely have that again for you today. I've got Guha and Karthik Bala from Velan Studios. This is a fairly new company, and they've just launched something huge. It's Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, but these two have an illustrious career. They started Vicarious Visions together many years ago, and I guess my first question is, you two are brothers. How do you get along and create things and run companies, and how do you not fight?
Well, it's taken us a while to work on that. We started back we've done creative work actually for, as long as we can remember. We started with short films, comic books, things like that, even way before we started Vicarious Visions in 1991. And that
Awesome.
was when we were in high school. So we've had a lifetime to figure it out. And it's still a work in progress, I'd say.
We never said we don't fight, but it's good. It's all good.
Yeah.
What's the big strength of you guys being family and brothers, and maybe this could be an inspiration for other people that have started companies within their own family or with someone they're very tight with. What's a core strength that you have in each other?
Trust. I think we can. I think this extends beyond just the two of us. I think there's the team that we have and the core team. Many of us worked together for a long time, and it's very high trust. And we kind of fill each other's gaps. We're like whatever needs to get done. And it's like, all right, this base needs to get covered, or that base needs to get covered. We'll just do it. And I think that's important in any kind of partnership. Whether it's with family members or your business partners, or in this case, both.
Totally.
I think
Yes.
one of
Okay.
the things that we learned early on is, as much as you put a team together to succeed together, you have to say, well, are you willing to fail together as well?
Mm.
And that's in some ways a much bigger test as to whether you're a strong team or a strong partnership. And when it was early days with Vicarious as well as early days with Velan Studios, the place that Karthik and I started was betting on each other. We knew that we could, whatever challenges that we faced, we could figure it out together. And that's been a rule that we applied to our team as well. And so everybody that joins, we ask ourselves that question. Is this a person that I could succeed with? But more importantly, is this a person that I could fail with? And we're so proud of the people around us.
Oh, you should be. Well, let's go back to when you were kids for a second here, though. Obviously, you guys were game fans. Who won?
Depends on the game. It depends on the game. But yeah, look, we did speed runs on Super Mario Brothers on the NES, together after school. So playing PC games and console games. I mean, we grew up with it, right? Much like most of us. And this is something that we wanted to do. And we were fortunate enough to meet somebody who became our mentor in high school, who's doing a startup with his brother. And he's like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to make games. And he's like, why don't you do it? I said, I don't know anything about making games. Don't know how to program. And I'm just a kid, and he's like, well, that's not an excuse. Here's a programming book. Here's an animation package. Go learn, figure it out. And that was kind of the birth of Vicarious. And I was 15, he was 14, and the studio grew, and we ran it for 25 years. And having gone through the good, the bad, the ugly, and from work for hire projects and co-development, creating new IP, becoming part of a larger company like Activision, being part of a public company for such a long time, and then leaving on the 25th anniversary, which was one of the hardest things we've ever had to do, and saying, you know what, we're going to start over from scratch. And
was that a shock to your employees that you guys were leaving, or were they kind of prepared?
Well, I think, a big change comes as a shock in the immediate sense. But we knew that the team we built was prepared for change. Strong leadership team that we had invested in for years. And it was meant to be that way because the company that we built was so special to us. We wanted it to succeed, well into the future, while we went on really a very different mission.
That's awesome. Now, Vicarious Visions, we're going to talk about Velan very soon, I promise. But Vicarious Visions, you guys know I love the company, and Karthik and you and I have talked at many GDCs over the years. It's a very distinctive name. And, you guys must have been quite young when you came up with it because you're still young. But tell me about the name Vicarious Visions and what it meant and means and what you're proudest of from the
All right,
company.
tell that. I know this may be a little bit more embarrassing for you than me.
It's a little embarrassing, but I'll tell you the truth. Okay.
Okay.
So we were going to our first meeting, and
it was a business meeting.
It was a first business meeting, and the person who was driving us saying, "Well, what are you going to call yourselves?" Like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, you need a name for your company. And we're like walking in. Of course, this person was driving us because we didn't have driver's licenses at the time, and taking us to our first meeting. And so we're like walking in the door. I'm like, we need a name. And then I said, how about Vicarious Visions? As we were walking in, like, sounds good. Let's do it. And the reason was I spelled the word vicarious wrong on my spelling test the week before.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know what it meant, and I just learned the word, and that was it.
That's awesome. That's a good origin story, man. Okay, so I'm asking one last question about Vicarious, who had a killer year this year with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, by the way, and you guys must be so proud of that. But what are you proudest of on the projects that you shipped at Vicarious?
Well, I think that the consistent pattern that we had, during our time there, which is a bit of a span, was that we kept on asking, what are the obvious but really hard problems to solve? So, and each of our breakthroughs came by getting the other side of that question. So, speaking of Tony Hawk, one of our first breakthroughs at Vicarious was Tony Hawk 2 for Game Boy Advance.
Yes.
2001. Which it was really about not saying how do you downport or you replicate, something else, but how do you create a really unique handheld experience by making 3D possible for the very first time on what was essentially a 2D system.
Yeah.
This was a problem that nobody else was talking about. Nobody else was taking on. We came up with a very unique solution to it that was not just a technical solve, but it solved a fundamental gameplay issue of, how can you have this very dynamic skateboarding experience except on the go? Like you can essentially take it to a skate park and play.
Right on.
But that was true for years later for Doom 3 for Xbox, where Xbox was so much more limited than what Doom 3 ran on in terms of PC. It was true for Guitar Hero when we took it to the Wii. It's true for Guitar Hero when we took it to Nintendo DS.
That's right. Yes.
Later for Skylanders, first for the 3DS experience or the game engine that we created for Skylanders, which was called Alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Skylanders Swap Force, where you can mix and match parts of a toy, where we had to solve actually crazily strange physics electromagnetics problems to get chips to work with interchangeable parts and neodymium magnets. In addition to a game that was PS4 and Xbox One ready, but it was the same question. It was like simple, resonant experiences that people weren't sorting out because they were fundamentally difficult problems.
Yeah.
And we take them on together with the team and get to the other side of it with the team.
And I think as a studio, and over the years, speaking to the longevity, it was like that reinvention, process, reinventing, the studio, reinventing yourselves, and the kind of experiences. And, so the ultimate reinvention we had to go through was actually leaving the studio that we started, when we were kids, to reinvent ourselves and think about a new approach, because we didn't want to repeat ourselves. We wanted to take a different approach to building a studio, a new kind of culture, with Velan. But interestingly, that scrappiness and invention, that sense of wonder and discovery was like the core DNA element that we wanted to build a new studio around. Right. And really focus on that as the heartbeat of the studio in creating something new.
Yeah, you guys have a history, a record of being technologists as much as software creators and content creators that way, which I think really it had you poised very well for the decisions that you made moving on to Velan. But I think you guys could leave Vicarious because you had already gone through selling Vicarious, and
Mhm.
you had entrusted your company to a larger company with Activision. There are people watching this right now who are probably considering a lot of the same kinds of scenarios for their own companies. Talk to us about the learning process of selling and getting your company ready for acquisition, and kind of what that meant for you as individuals, as the founders of your business, but also the people that you were working with.
I think you got to ask your question, fundamental question: why? Why do you want to do that? And
Mm,
whether, and be honest about it, right? Is it building the company to have an exit for shareholders, for yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that, absolutely nothing wrong with that. Or is it for a different set of goals? When we sold Vicarious to Activision, this was 2005. We weren't actually. That wasn't an obvious goal. That's what we wanted to do. And
yeah.
we had a great partnership going with Activision as well as other major publishers. And but it was an opportunity, in talking to the team where they wanted to work on bigger things. And as a studio, I think maybe we were around 90 people at the time, and we had to focus on fewer titles. And of course, each game was getting bigger. The teams that you needed were getting bigger. It wasn't quite as small teams as the earlier handheld days. And so as a studio, we were working on fewer titles that were bigger and better.
Hmm.
And that's the trajectory that the teams wanted to go in. And so it made sense to be part of a larger company, who can take that wider portfolio risk, right? So as an independent, you know, we all live and die by our next project, and
Right.
so being part of a bigger company, made sense, and so really our reason as to why we wanted to sell was we wanted to grow, and we wanted to grow the studio and take on bigger challenges. We also wanted to grow as individuals, and learn how a public company operates
Right.
and develop some new skills. So I think that's a big question to to answer.
That's an incredible, piece of insight there, because I think a lot of people, when they're starting out, they have this really precious kind of connection to the company that they build, and then they recognize as they go on that it's an asset that is meant to be amorphous and change and grow and can mean many things to many people. You guys have had this long career making video games in New York State, and New York isn't home base to many game makers. Um, I imagine, though, through the growth of Vicarious, you guys have probably inspired other smaller developers around you. What has that been like, though, being based somewhere where most of the game industry isn't?
I think early on, I mean, I think Karthik and I were among the first couple of game developers in our part of upstate New York, in the kind of the greater Albany capital region of New York State.
Yeah.
And it meant a lot of things. One is that right after we each graduated college, we had to look to expand our team beyond just the people that we went to school with, and we couldn't get anybody in the United States or frankly Western Europe to move to upstate New York to make video games. So I actually went to Russia myself, along with one of our people, and then subsequently China to recruit programmers and artists. And we did the immigration
Fantastic.
paperwork ourselves to be
Very
able to bring
nice.
them here.
Yeah.
So, and actually, it's so cool. Actually, a couple of those people are still with us, or still with Vicarious today. From so many years ago. So starting game development in a place that a cluster doesn't exist was super challenging. But it
Yeah.
actually helped us identify questions that I don't think we would have otherwise looked at as deeply if we were in a
Hmm.
different place. Like, how can we be at a time where it was a sort of a churn and burn model for get onto a production. It's the nature of the industry to burn out. We
Yeah.
couldn't do it that way because if you had a person, it was so hard to get people in. They had to minimize turnover and maximize the satisfaction of employees, make the work
Right.
meaningful, and that kind of
Right.
thing. So it made us invest in our senior sort of people managers, people management skills. Think
Cool.
of HR as a strategic function as opposed to a way to fill seats
Mm.
and those sorts of things. So that was a part of what we had to do. Now, fast forward many years later, it also meant that we had to think of ourselves not only as a creative enterprise, but as a commercial one.
Hmm.
We couldn't just be a make your game and then disband and then come back to make another project. A lot of companies
Right.
were doing that at the time. We had
Right.
to think of ourselves as here's what's coming up, here's what the future looks like, how do we roadmap it? So we have to start thinking of ourselves more as a systematic sort of business in addition to a creative enterprise. Fast forward many years later, after we sold to Activision, so much of our world was focused around the other pieces of Activision. And when we stepped back as we left, we found a whole community of developers that had come up around us in a lot of cases because we had something to do with that,
It's
by the
I
a
love
side.
it.
it's a bit of a
Yeah.
family tree, you
Mm-hmm.
have and some incredible teams that we helped start up. There was a student team that we collaborated on. Another Tony Hawk American Skateland for the DS,
Right
and
on.
it was a startup where this team they were trying to make a mod and um, they started using analytics. I'm like, what is that? And this was like
Yes.
2004,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I'm like, you should focus on that, build a company around that. And so they did, and we said, look, here's a project. Let's do this crazy thing about hooking a video game up to a website with
Mm.
leaderboards and stuff. And this was like 2004, 2005.
Right.
And Tony Hawk's American Skateland on DS was one of the first online titles with
You
Nintendo
guys have
license.
always been doing that. You always have been doing
So
that. You've always
it
been
was
like, here's a little bit of extra tech you didn't even think of. That's in our handheld game. I love it, man. It's
so
awesome.
that actually not only helped Agora Games get going as a studio,
Yeah.
that eventually morphed into the backbone of online backend for Guitar Hero,
Right.
and it expanded from there. But and Agora is now part of Warner Brothers, WB Games
Hmm.
New York. They're
Hmm.
actually across the hall from us in the same building as
Oh,
Velan
how cool.
Studios,
How
and
cool.
there's sort of a family tree, and they spun off another team that's now PUBG Mad Glory. So the PUBG
Cool.
studios here in the region,
Yeah.
and so there's a number of studios, including startups and indies, and we're building this really nice, regional cluster that's homegrown, and there's been several big exits, as part of it.
That's amazing. And that's the way it goes for anybody starting their company anywhere in the world. You don't have to move to California. You don't have to move to Montreal or Vancouver. It's cool if you do, but you can really be based anywhere now. And what's interesting about your story, I think, as it pertains to external development, you kind of charted that course in a bunch of different ways. I would imagine there was a lot of work for hire work as you were getting your feet wet and kind of doing early external development stuff on ideas. And then you did a lot of internal stuff where you guys were the leads and kept everything inside. But then I think with Activision, you almost worked in partnership with massive studios, to be like an external force, an external production element in there. Talk to me about, your own experience with external development, but then also partnering with other external developers and how important external development in general has become to game making.
Whether you're leading a title or whether you're, supporting a title, as an external team, it's obviously highly collaborative, and there's a real opportunity to learn. And so in the early days at Vicarious, like some of our early console experience and getting into the tech is that we worked on ports, and sometimes the ports were on console. Like we did Jedi Knight 2 with Raven, and we were
Yeah.
external, right? And then working with id on Doom 3 and learning all of that, it required a pretty significant rewrite of the tech and all that stuff for console. but it was a great way to build capability within the studio, right?
Right.
And and whether we were also working on licensed IP, whether it was like Disney, Pixar, or Marvel, we understood how the IP creators thought about, you know, developing IP, and that built skills to create new IP, later
Mm.
on. So when you look at the working as an external developer and working with partners, it's not just getting that job done, but it's like, what kind of capabilities, are we building? So a key component of strategy is the integrated set of capabilities that you're building, into your team. So we saw that, it was just soaking it in as a sponge. You know, we people think of us as like, sort of tech oriented, and we do have some pretty good technical jobs, but it's really experience first. We're really
Right.
thinking about the end experience. But one of the reasons we got pretty good at the tech is we started working with everybody else's engines, and we got in there. We understood how it all worked, and the pros and cons. And then when it came time to doing our own thing, we had built up those integrated set of skills. And even when we were leading titles, even when we are leading titles and we're working with external developers as we do now, it's still a two-way street, because there's
Right.
an opportunity for us to learn from specialty skills that external teams have, because they've honed in, in a particular area, and it's not, um, it's really difficult to be amazing at everything, right?
Yes.
And there's
Yes.
an opportunity to kind of collaborate with
I'd say
multiple
one of
teams.
the themes, though, for our success for us in lots of the different configuration, Vic, that you mentioned, was that each time we had to ask ourselves a question: what is the unusual thing we're bringing to the table that's going to give
Right.
us an advantage in this? So it often be a crazy technical approach that we developed to be able to solve a problem.
Right.
Sometimes those are risky, but we try to get our arms around that risk and deliver some kind of unusual value to our partner.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was whether we had sort of a way of doing a remaster or a port early in our days. It would be, and bring in even pitching an idea like Tony Hawk. It wasn't based on pitching, getting a deal, and then finding a solution. It would be trying to find an unusual solution that we can somehow prove out that
Well,
would
I'll tell
then
you what that
lead to
was like
something.
on the outside reviewing all these games, right? It felt to me that there was this just an adoration and an affinity for this opportunity and for the license that you guys were entrusted with. And
Mhm.
we all know the baggage that is associated with licensed games in our industry. And to pick up a Vicarious Visions game and know that it was going to be a fun Spider-Man game or a fun Tony Hawk game or a fun Guitar Hero game was really amazing. And such a great fresh breath of air. And I think you, as leaders and your designers and your directors, all understood that you were creating a brand and a name for yourselves, but there was also on the other end of it this person that loved these
Mhm.
characters and just wanted an incredible experience, and that came through, guys. That
Yeah.
has always come through.
Well,
And so
that's
now
awesome, because that
now
is.
you're on Mario, and now you're making a Nintendo first party brand new experience with Velan. Is it, how do you say it, Velan or Velan?
It's actually Velan.
Velan. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I probably didn't get it right there,
Yeah.
but talk to me about Mario Kart Live and how the heck did this come together? This is a big deal.
So,
Mhm.
we started Velan Studios in 2016, and we didn't want to repeat ourselves. We wanted to take a new approach, and the mission of the studio is to create breakthrough experiences that are magic. That's
Mm,
kind of the shorthand. So what does
that's
that
very
mean?
nice.
It's really, trying to discover new play patterns, new kinds of experiences that we haven't seen in video games before. Now, that's
Mm,
a freaking tall order.
yep.
As we all know, making games is hard. Trying
Yep.
to do something new is even harder. So it was a lofty goal, to try and go after it, but it meant sort of taking an approach of discovery. And so it wasn't about Mario or another IP or anything like that at the get go. It was actually, believe it or not, our business plan. It was a 4-step business plan, and it's written on a 3x5 index card to this day. It was never anything more than that. And so I'll share with you. It was step one was build an awesome team. Step two was go find the magic in something new that the team is super passionate about.
Right.
Step three is once we found that magic, figure out what the go-to-market strategy is, who the right partners might be. And then step four, build it, ship it, and evolve it with the player community. So that was a 4-step, easy, right?
Right. Yes.
Easy right down on
somehow
paper.
you just sprinkle Nintendo in there and it's all good. You're good. So everybody just do that. Follow that.
Easy 4-step plan. Everybody can follow. So anyway, we're like, building a team. So throughout 2017, there's a lot of experiments, a lot of different prototyping, and trying all kinds of interesting ideas. But like our development philosophy is really it's not about like big grandiose sort of vision, big picture stuff. It's actually kind of the opposite. It's looking at that core, that atomic core of something different, and getting that right in its most basic, stripped down form, and
the play feel,
of of the experience. And can we deliver something new out of that? Take away all the graphics, take away all those details and stuff. At its atomic core, can we do something a little bit different? And what is that? And you don't need a big team for that.
Right.
You need the right team for it. And it's not a this meets that, or I'm going to go into this existing category, because we're never going to outdo an existing studio who's like best in the world. Like we're not going to go make a first-person shooter to try and outdo Call of Duty or Battlefield.
Yeah,
right?
now would be the wrong time to launch Velan's Battle Royale. I'm going to give you that. That's some business advice for you guys.
Got it. So it's kind of going back, distilling it down to that core. And so one of the experiments in the middle of 2017 was sort of inspired by a little bit inspired by drone racing, and we're like, hey, this sort of sense of speed that you get, and can we put that on an RC car? And so we kind of cobbled together this sort of RC car with like drone parts, took it out back into a gravel pit, trashed the car within minutes. But like it was like a really cool and interesting sort of experience, and it's like that rush of speed was really really cool. And that was an analog camera, and it was just kind of kept bashed together, right?
Yeah,
and and we were like RC car fans when we were kids, and a couple of folks here are really into drone racing, and we know that RC cars can be notoriously difficult to drive.
Yeah.
Like, well, what if we came at it as game developers, and made it drive like a video game car in the real world, and all the cool accessibility and things that we do to make it feel good as a video game, can we inject it with some software to get it to drive like a video game car? And we went off, and the team went off and did that, and it felt great, and we're like having a lot of fun. I'm like, this feels like a video game driving around in first person. But then the whole host of like technical challenges in front. It's like the video looked, pretty bad because it was analog, looked VHS, and we're like, so I guess we need to figure out how to do real-time HD video encoding and decoding with no buffering, no loading, no latency. All right, let's go figure that one out. But it was starting with that core of what felt really interesting, and that led to this toy-like experience. But then we wanted to build a game around it.
Right.
And we built this little mixed reality prototype, and it was an RC car that drove around these checkpoints, and it knew that it completed a lap, and we could do this in multiplayer. And we're like, this is really fun. We need to make this. And then it became like, well, we've got something magical and special, and it's really fun. what's the right go-to-market strategy? Who is crazy enough to go on this little journey with us? Ding.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of it. And we took it to Nintendo, and we didn't pitch an idea. We had them play it,
Yeah.
and they immediately got it.
Did you
And
go to Nintendo Japan or Nintendo US?
we did go to Japan and hopped on a plane,
Sweet.
took the prototypes with us, pray to God that it worked.
Oh man. With
And
Miyamoto-san?
I'm sorry?
Was Miyamoto-san a part of that?
No, it was so we met with Takahashi-san, who runs the first and second party teams, and
Right.
Shioda-san, who runs
Yep.
the hardware team. They had an opportunity to play, and it was great. And from there we iterated on it. We knew that we had to solve a whole lot of technical challenges, and we said, "Can we make Mario Kart?"
That is amazing.
Like, okay, let's do it. Let's try.
Okay. I have a million more questions for you. I'm asking one last one, and it's just for me. When is our F-Zero racing experience coming?
It's a good idea. That's a really good.
Okay.
Good idea,
All right, we've got
But,
a Q&A.
We got to tell you though,
Yeah.
it's we created this technology, the first experience, but there was a lot of unexpected surprises along the way, and so many ideas, to explore, because we think that there's a bigger notion here, sort of mixed reality devices and mixed reality gaming.
Yeah,
Having digital and physical coexist in the same space
totally.
to create new kinds of experiences.
That's
There's
the
lots of
step
ideas.
4 of our business plan, which is build it, ship it, and evolve it with a community.
Right.
Making something brand new, it doesn't fit current definitions. It's sort of like this thing. It doesn't fit into a square
Yes.
genre. It's not quite a racing game. It's not quite what's coming
Yes.
before it. And
Yeah.
so you can't really tell where to go with it until you get it in the hands of people, see how they're playing. It's sort of what we see is, wow, it's unexpectedly and differently social. It's social in the room. It's creative, unexpectedly and very differently creative.
And the amazing videos online. Oh my God.
Yep.
Of people creating their own tracks and everything. Oh, it's so cool.
And their pets and their cats.
Yeah. All right, listen.
Yes.
We have a live Q&A, and selfishly, I would like to lock you guys up and just have you for the whole hour. But clearly, people have questions for you. We're going to start with Junie, who says, "When you've already seen and done as much as you have, what are you still excited about and looking forward to doing with Velan?"
Well,
Did I get the name right? I got the name right.
Close.
Velan.
Velan.
Velan. Okay, I'll get it by the end of this. I promise.
I think invention is just intrinsically fascinating. Every time you do it, it's super hard and it's super satisfying. The measure of success for us would be, can we do this over and over again so we can keep people guessing? What are they going to come up with next? And that's really a worthwhile creative goal, for us, because it's a way of making a lasting contribution to the world of, games and to consumers and so forth. So I find it challenging every time we look at an idea. Will this resonate? How can we make it work? How simple can we make it? Because making it happen is hard. So coming up with something complicated with a complicated solution equals it doesn't work out. Yeah. So these are timeless kind of questions. It keeps us ticking.
Just excited about everything. It's going back to being a startup and new kinds of ideas, and it's like being 15 again.
And actually, the more important
with 25 years of experience or more.
Yeah.
Right.
Coming on 30.
That's amazing.
The main thing is the new crop of people, like the new talent that we see coming into the industry, the new questions being asked and stuff, that keeps us young.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the people that we get to work with every day. To be
and God, do they need you too, right? They need people that are not bailing, right? You're not just is selling it off and okay, bye-bye. You're like, you believe in the business, and you believe in entertaining people with this medium.
You know,
people talk a good game. I
Yeah.
think, people talk a good game about, hey, I'm going to quit and do my big thing and
Yeah,
all that stuff. And some people just never do it. And, we just need to do that. We need to put our money where our mouth is every time.
It's our
That's
it's
awesome.
our team. It's much like people watching. It's it's who you work with and your team that keeps you going.
Absolutely. David Lamb asks, what's your vision for the future of game development? Many talk about a film-like future of a small core team and external dev partners to do the heavy lifting. And can that work? And we're kind of experiencing that in some ways. Thank you, COVID-19. But that's kind of what's happening right now. But is that the way that you guys see it?
I don't really see one ring to rule them all, type of
Right.
thing. You don't really see one single model. It depends on the problem you're trying to solve. So we've experienced where we're trying to do, large scope AAA games that really require multiple hundreds of people with,
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of specialized skills, where you have a lead studio, satellite studios doing co-dev, external partners, and so forth. We've seen other, just indie teams, one or two people with creative breakthroughs that intrinsically can be small. There's a spectrum, and I think if you center on the creative and the problems you're trying to solve, you could find a flavor of, any of these things.
And I think if you can really drill in on what makes you and your team unique, or what you can produce that's unique and differentiated, not just on a creative concept, but even if it's like a service, and you're have a specialized set of skills, and you can kind of laser in on
Like Liam Neeson.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Sorry. You can't say that, and I don't drop Taken in there.
It's finding that, right? I mean, it's like even back in the day, as we had a specialization on handheld, and we were like go to developers. There were a few developers that really were the go-to developers on GBA, and like it's finding those points of differentiation and like leaning in, because there's all these different models, and I think they can all work. There's multiple ways of being successful, but I think to cut through the noise in one way, shape, or form, you got to find distinction.
Wonderful. We've got a great question right here. This is from Antonova Elvina, and they ask, when you got to the plane, you got off the plane in Japan, did you have the full idea of how it would all be done, or did you have just an idea and a prototype to show? And how deep was the R&D post that meeting, or pre and post that meeting?
I would say the way it's actually a really great question, because it's sort of like, how fully baked does an idea need to be
Yeah.
before you show it to the world? And it may
Mm-hmm.
not be to consumers at that point, and maybe to partners. But we sort of mentally made a model where we thought, if we're coming up with something new, unless we can hand over the controller um, and have the person playing really feel a sense of magic and engagement, it's not worth doing. So in a sense, it wasn't about pitching a big vision or a big plan, or even saying, here's the scope and here are the dimensions to it. It was really about saying, can we hand it over to a person so they can't put it down?
Right.
And let's see where their imaginations go. If their imagination can take them places, then this idea has a basis to be something.
And we all know that's how Nintendo works. That's how they make their games. It's all just about, fun, and then they add the layers of story and art and all the pieces, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had very little in the way of sort of graphics and details, because that didn't matter for what
Cool.
was special about it.
Right.
We had so we have another title coming out next year, and this will be
Now's the perfect time. You're
not,
among
not
friends.
announcing the game.
Okay.
But we have announced our partnership with Electronic Arts, and we have
Okay.
a new IP that's under the EA Originals label.
Cool.
And that's a project where we spent 18 months in finding the fun and what was unique about it. Again, it's a new kind of play pattern, new kind of experience, totally different than what we just did. And we brought that to E3 2018,
Mm.
and got a room at the Hotel Fig, and we showed it to potential publishers, and we eventually signed with EA, and it was again, it wasn't a big demo. There was still a ton of technical problems and other things that had to be solved afterwards. We hadn't looked at. We identified here are the things that we need to figure out, and we
Right.
were kind of clear about all of that. But what made it special and unique, and we can put it in people's hands, they're like, oh my gosh, this is really fun. This is totally different, and that's what got people excited. So it was a very similar kind of approach.
And there's something unexpected or not obvious about that approach as well, which is instead of putting all the extra frills around it, if that's all you hand over, it's also a way to identify who the right partner is.
Right.
Because if
Because
they
they
can't,
need to engage with you and be as excited as you are. Otherwise, why
exactly,
bother?
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Our step three of our business plan, figure out the go to market, means you have to have the right partner
Sure.
that can actually say this is a fit for what they're trying to do
Right.
strategically. It's a fit for their skills and capabilities that they could bring to bear to be able to supplement sort of what we're bringing to bear as well. And when you strip it to its basics, that's the best format to identify that.
Right on. I've got a great question from Eli A saying, was this the first time doing industrial design and physical product manufacturing? Did you do it in-house or partner with orgs to accomplish the kart piece of Mario Kart Live home circuit?
So we previously worked on Guitar Hero and Skylanders. So the idea of like integrated hardware and software experiences is not new to us, and so we've done that for a long time. And internally the prototype that we built the hardware, the original reference design hardware prototype, and from kit bashing to then refining and building both the hardware and the firmware and the software. It was a tiny team. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was like our our prototype team before we showed anybody, it was maybe 6 to 8 people, somewhere in that, doing all of it. And we have no business doing any of it, but like we got into it and we did that. And in the case of the Nintendo partnership, part of the unique set of capabilities they bring to bear is like the hardware design and for and scale manufacturing, and so on. And but we have prior experience with what that is like from our Guitar Hero and Skylander days, so that helped a lot.
This is the year of game companies not being able to fulfill orders. Everybody's at home. They want to play.
Mhm.
How is Mario Kart Live doing? First thought, the first things I heard is that it's impossible to find. Is that still true, or are we cresting on that? Are you figuring that out? Are people going to be able to have it under the tree this holiday?
I think that's a great question for Nintendo. But I will say that on a personal experience, I keep checking the Target app and going there, and it's out of stock, and I'm sorry. We're I think everybody's doing the best they can, and
It's not just you, man. It's pretty much every hot
it is.
thing, Even the Switch is just that we can't find the Switch to begin with.
The next gen consoles, the new Nvidia graphics cards, you name it.
Yep.
It's a challenge, but aren't we all lucky to be in games?
Right. And aren't we lucky to be fans of games and to be players of games
Yeah.
Mhm.
now? Like, boy, do we, like, the world is waking up. Everybody's getting this. I'm on CNN now every couple of weeks talking about video games these days because they're
Mhm.
putting more mass media coverage of this
It,
stuff out there. And it's
it
it's
is so
good.
true.
Like, and we need it, We need it more
Yeah.
now more than ever. We always needed it. But now the rest of the world is saying, yeah, we need this.
You know
I've
what?
got a question.
Bringing joy, um, especially this year, so important.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing.
Well, let's talking about COVID. We've got a great question from Jeffrey saying, "How has your creative process been impacted by COVID and work from home?"
Yeah, I think it's been challenging, for all of us. For speaking of Velan, because we're so discovery focused, and there's a lot of prototyping, involved. It was actually a very challenging transition in a way, for
Hmm.
us to be working fully distributed, because it's like
Yeah,
it's
there's a
amazing
physical
how
element there. You got
the
to touch the
physical.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, hey, come and take a look at this. Come over here, see how this feels, or like jumping between a hardware lab and building something and trying it out, or like fixing something that's broken because you've got the tools there. But it's like just the collaborative nature of sort of everybody in a room, with those teams. There's so much informality in that, and even like just kind of going out to lunch and just talking about ideas and just brainstorming solutions to problems. It's amazing how we take a lot of that for granted, that
Right.
drives inflection points during development, that you get those breakthroughs. And then all of a sudden, you got Zoom fatigue. You're trying to structure these meetings. You're going from meeting to meeting to meeting, especially for the leads. And I'm sure many of you have found the same challenges. The leads are burning the candle at both ends because they've got stuff they need to get done, and they're just going from
Right.
meeting to meeting. So these are all like very difficult things to overcome. I I don't think that it's we've been able to 100% substitute it and get back to the same level of efficiency that we had.
I mean, actually,
Yeah.
efficiency is probably not the right word, because in a lot of ways, um, it can be productive, especially individual contributors can be productive. You can
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of tasks done, whether they're the right tasks and
Yeah.
whether it's the best experience that it can be.
Yeah.
Those are sort of questionable. Those are impossible answers
Yeah.
to know for sure. I can say that we're really looking forward to the other side of this.
I mean, seriously, like there's been a lot put on everybody this year to try to
Yeah.
kind of, find the best way through all of this. But I think this distributed development probably the focus on so much of it this year, and we're seeing it with the XDS conference this year, the all of these different time zones. And now that there isn't like an office space that we go to, it's in all of our homes. The on-off switch is harder to find, especially if you're passionate about this stuff, right? And you're in startup mode, so I'm sure it's just fire over there, and you guys are, and you
It's
probably have to remind
been,
yourselves, no, let's take a break. Let's not be working right now.
so
It's
I
hard
will,
to
yeah.
it is hard to celebrate with a team, and that's a funny thing to say in a way.
Yeah.
One thing is a ship party, but every little insight, every little success is worthy of taking a moment, and it's
Hmm.
just so much harder to do.
But I will
Right.
say though, necessity is mother of invention, and there's so many new techniques and tools and things like that we've had to all like lean on, and and I think that has opened up new possibilities that we didn't
Sure.
have before,
Sure.
We were
and new
probably
ways
a
of
little bit
working.
more closed-minded to distributed development ourselves. I mean, even having done it for so long, we had our sacred cow, so to speak, of things that we just wouldn't do in a distributed manner. So I think it's opened our mind to more
Yeah,
possibilities.
I think it's good. It's
Mhm.
given some flexibility, and I, in some respects, this is kind of weird to say, right? We're like closing out a project, and it's always intense, but you're there with family, and
Yeah.
that's actually been a good thing. And
Yeah.
even quick 5 minutes, going out with my kids in the backyard and playing ball, or taking the dog out, and that kind of thing. It's it can it can give you a little bit of a mental break as
For
well.
sure. For sure. There's also something to be said with the intrusion of the camera in all of our lives kind of makes you pay attention a little bit more, and you're kind of aware that we're all in this. And the other thing is that we all use the internet so much for just complaining on Twitter or whatever, or but now we're all in Zoom meetings all the time. And I think that there is just this innate kind of civility that happens when you're having face-to-face conversations like this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And we need that. We need that in this world right now. We have another great question from Junie. What are the most remarkable differences between starting Vicarious and Velan?
There you go. You
Velan.
got it.
If I say it three different ways, I'm going to get one of them.
I think in a lot of ways, starting Vicarious, it was our first time out. I mean, we were learning how to make games when there was no framework or there were no commercial engines. It was just really a very open-ended thing. And we had a couple of games that we wanted to make, the games that we thought, hey, look, if we made it, people will like it. And so it's classic indie mode. We actually had to develop our business mindset so that we could bring in cash to support the games that we wanted to make.
Right.
It turned out that we got really good at the other stuff. Um, and that was a process and a journey and that kind of thing. But it was our first step into saying, how do we strike a balance between being creative and having something that's commercially sustainable? So that was
Right.
the first set of journeys for us. Eventually, it was about getting to scale and delivering high quality experiences and leading and so forth. As we sold to Activision and beyond. With Velan Studios, it was actually there were two types of things. One is um, we found it increasingly harder and harder in a large structure to take real swings on things that were completely unknown. It's a bit of a paradox, right? Because the largest companies have the most cash resources, they have the ability to innovate and so forth, but they're also beholden to their shareholders and markets to be, have predictable results. So the top talent gets assigned to that. We essentially had to take an approach where we said, let's find top talent and take swings on things that are inherently super risky and volatile. So that's a bit of a counter bet. The other thing, and so that was, remarkable, to us from a Velan standpoint. What was even more so was that going from that kind of large structured environment to being truly scrappy and indie, it took us a while to reprogram ourselves.
Right. I bet.
Like we found ourselves so unused to doing things in a small way and in a scrappy way. That
Right.
was a big retraining of our minds on how to do that.
Wasn't just filling out an expense report now and sending that in.
Yeah,
Hey,
look, I
wait.
mean, there's nobody to look over your shoulder. I mean, this is it. This
Yes.
is it.
This is it. It's like there's no people for that. Oh, wait, you're it.
Yeah, we're in it.
Yeah. That is awesome. Now, in addition to Velan Studios, you also have this whole other division of Velan, which I think a lot of XDS attendees may their ears may perk up when they hear this. Tell us about your investments into the space.
So Velan Studios is about breakthrough games that are magic.
Hmm.
We wanted to keep making games, but at the same time, we noticed throughout our career, and we talked a little bit about the ecosystem of game developers that's built around our region, we love to work with entrepreneurs. And we did that on a very informal basis through our time in Activision. What we set out to do with Velan Ventures was to invest in entrepreneurs that are involved in making games, but also game and game related technologies. And it's at a time where we're seeing game design principles broaden beyond just pure entertainment. So we look at adjacent fields as well. And so one, it feeds our curiosity in a way, but it also really helps us get engaged with a broader set of entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah, I mean and it's not just a sort of financial investment, right? It's sort of time and helping on strategy or like getting them hooked up to the right people. It's stuff that we do on the university and non-for-profit side as well, and in our copious free time. But this is important. It's not a traditional VC or angel fund. It's very sort of bespoke, and we look at opportunities, and it's sort of chemistry with entrepreneurs because we were lucky enough to have mentors early on,
Right.
and it's important for us to be able to support others trying to do the same thing.
Are there specific kind of projects that you're thinking of, or do they have to kind of fit within what Velan would produce itself, or
Mhm.
can they be completely different?
Actually, usually they're very different.
Mm,
And in a sense, um, that's why Velan Studios does what it does. And then Ventures really broadens the types of things that we do invest in. But
right.
typically, you have to find the right fit for that as well. So often we have conversations in Ventures where a venture investment is not quite the right thing for
Yeah.
their entrepreneur, but we may be able to help the entrepreneur figure things out and hook them up with the right people as well. It's a way of paying it forward as much as investing.
You guys, you cracked through in New York State, and you put game development on the map out there. And I'm sure that the state is very happy that you're there. And I see this time and again that it becomes a bit of a part of the tourism kind of story and the message, right? And to bring people to the area. I'm curious if you have noticed that if there are other areas around the world that are in a similar kind of situation to where you guys were maybe 25 years ago.
Oh yeah, totally. And there's, I think we see that in lots of other places in the United States. We see that, in Europe. Even looking at India as a great example, of the growing, gaming culture, and kids growing up with video games and largely mobile. Um, we're seeing that in lots of places, and you can be anywhere. I think post COVID is going to make that even more true. So, in a
Right.
lot of ways, it's just accelerating the existing trends,
Mm-hmm.
and as games become even more mass, in terms of being part of everyday, life, extrapolate a generation or two, and what that means.
Time.
It does take time, but
Yeah.
we're seeing that, and we're also seeing incubators and accelerators and other like sort of tech ecosystems, supporting game startups, and it's a great thing. I mean, I remember when I was going to college, here at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and it was an undergrad in computer science, and I met with a certain professor. We'll go nameless, and that person said, "What does computer science have anything to do with video games?"
Right.
And I was like, "Oh my god, we got a lot of work to do."
Yeah.
And so it was just look, and this is early '90s, right? But like,
Yep.
still, it's a lot has changed, since then. And just like you were talking about, being on CNN and so on, um, it's as much part of our broader culture now,
It is.
and that also has a big feedback loop into the ecosystem. And we're seeing like amazing talent, amazing startup talent who've never done it before, who have a completely different perspective, than us, and are coming up with breakthrough ideas. And we're like, man, love to be 15 again.
On the economic development side, when we look at mid-sized metros like the New York capital region, and it exists throughout the United States as well as actually throughout the world, um, industries like ours can really be huge economic generators,
Yes. So
economic engines.
make friends with your local uh, jurisdiction, your local
Yeah.
government. Yes.
Well, I mean, so government assistance can, it's okay, in a sense, it's like it
Yeah.
has made a sizable difference in places like Quebec and Texas and places like that.
Yep.
But it's rather limited in New York State. It's
Yep.
but it's more about saying, um, what does it take to make a cluster? What does it make? What does it take to be able to get a density of companies and so forth? Sometimes public policy could play a role in it.
Mm-hmm.
Other times it just takes motivated individuals to go ahead and do it. Um, but it can make a big difference over time. It could transform communities. You have to take 1 or 2 decades at least as a horizon. But you
Yeah.
could take a place like downtown Troy, where Velan Studios is based. This is sort of, it's gone from urban blight to urban renewal.
That's great.
And industries like ours can make a big difference in communities like this.
And especially
That's
kind of
awesome.
going forward, games so hard, and it's like high intellectual capital, right? It's creative, and technically complex. We're at that intersection as an industry. That's not really replaceable, by automation and all that. Yes, tools and things like that will make it better, but that ingenuity that the industry has, and talent, that becomes high value from an economic engine, and
Yes.
that's it's going to become even more crucial, in the
It,
decades to come.
it's an art form. developing games that really register with human beings. And it won't be a fully automated thing until it's robots making games for robots, which
There you go.
might be in your future
Got an
business
idea
plan.
there.
Yeah.
You got an idea there.
Those are going to be boring games.
Yeah, to humans.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we could keep talking for hours. What a treat to have you both. This is Guha and Karthik Bala from Velan Studios and Velan. What is it? What's the other part? Velan
Ventures.
Velan Ventures. I love it. The VV. Is that it? That's the way you guys work, right?
It's our
That's
middle
awesome.
initials.
It's our middle initial. V.
Right on. Well, it's my first. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and for your great questions. Don't go anywhere, though. There is a lot more XDS coming up, and you're going to have a lot of fun things to watch and learn from.
Thanks, everybody. Pleasure.